Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our FSB National webinar this morning, 25 must-haves for your website in 2025. My name is Rob Bazzini, Development Manager for FSB in Southwestern Mid Wales area. I'm delighted to be hosting this morning and welcoming you all to the session. A big welcome to you all for attending. And a big warm welcome, of course, to our guest speaker this morning, Will Roberts. Thanks to you all for attending, and thanks, Will, of Webbox Digital for sharing your expertise with us this morning. It's a really straightforward format for the session. In a moment, I'll hand over to Will for our main presentation, and that'll be followed by a question and answer session. We've already received lots of questions. We'll try and get through as many as we can. Please do use the question and answer function at the bottom of your screens if you do want to ask any questions today. Just before I hand over to Will, I'll mention that the session is being recorded today and will shortly be available on the on-demand page of our FSB website. The facility enables us to watch the session again. I'm sure there's going to be an awful lot of follow-up points that you want to look at again. There's 25 key points we're looking to cover today, so I'm sure there's going to be many people who will want to visit the session again. And also, of course, you'd be welcome to suggest that other people watch the session again. So if you aren't a member of FSB, we'd be delighted to speak to you to let you know about the many ways in which FSB can help you and your businesses. Please do visit our website, www.fsb.org.uk, to arrange a meeting with a membership advisor who can tell you how we can help your businesses. Without further ado, I think it's appropriate if I bring in Will for the main presentation. Will, welcome.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for that warm welcome. So thank you for Rob and also Sean in the background who have helped organize this today. If there's any technical issues as we make a little start, please feel free just to pop a note into the Q&A, but hopefully everyone can hear and see us. Quick introduction to myself. So as Rob said, I'm Will. I'm the Managing Director here at Webbox. We're a digital agency that helps businesses with their websites and performance marketing to ultimately generate more inquiries and leads and membership inquiries. Now, I'm not going to delve into it any more than that, but I just want to give you some context as to kind of who I am and why I'm delivering this presentation this morning. Now, just a couple of quick points. Obviously, Rob's mentioned we're recording, so please feel free to catch up on this later. I also just need to ask a little bit of forgiveness because this is going to be a fast-paced talk, okay? So I'm going to rattle through these 25 must-haves. So forgive me if I'm going over each of them lightly, but we will have a chance to delve into them more in a Q&A session afterwards. There'll be a few opportunities throughout the presentation for you just to use the raise hands button within Zoom just to get involved. I won't pick on anyone, so don't worry, I'm not going to embarrass you, but I would love you to get involved at those points. And finally, would love you to share your feedback on this session. You can tag us at Webbox Digital. Now, this talk is split into 6 sections. So you might be thinking, our website, I'm really focused just on the design, or I'm really focused on maybe just the content of a site. Well, look, there's going to be loads of must-haves for your focus area, okay? But we're going to split this into 6 sections. So without further ado, I'm going to start with the first 6 must-haves, and these all relate to the design of your website. So the first one is a data-driven user experience. Now, let me explain. So users' expectations are becoming higher and higher. So obviously web designers have to account for the fact that user experience design is becoming more important. We need to make sure that the website is easy to navigate. It's really simple. It leads people to the content and call to actions seamlessly. And this is really done by having a user experience or a UX, which is just seamless and effortless. Now, this doesn't come easy. Like all good things, you have to work at it. But here's a couple of things in terms of how you might want to achieve this. So you first want to define your strategy. So how are you going to go about making your website have this data-driven user experience, and you'll put a strategy together to outline that. Secondly, you'll start to track how people are behaving on your website. So a little top tip, you can use a tool called Hotjar, and this will start to gather information about how people use your website. And then thirdly, you can then learn from that data and evolve your website to improve the user experience based on the data that you've gathered through Hotjar, and there are plenty of other tools as well. Now, our second must-have is a mobile-first design. So you'll be, this won't be a surprise, hopefully, you know, most of us will navigate to a website using a mobile device. So it's really important to make sure that the experience on a mobile device is perfect, rather than we're shoehorning it into a mobile experience, okay? Now, we're able to do this by actually having a mobile first design, as opposed to starting with the design of a website on a traditional desktop or laptop, okay? Now, if you're in the process of designing a new website, then it's really worth considering taking this approach, because actually, if you start with what the website's going to look like on mobile, this will give you a really good foundation moving forward. Now, the image on screen just shows you a little bit about some of the things that you should consider when you're looking to create a mobile-first website design. So the areas in green are where you can reach easily with your thumb. Then obviously amber, a little bit more of a stretch. And then the red zones would be a really difficult area for people to reach with their thumb. And this is important because you don't want to be putting call to actions or important buttons in those red zones, because ultimately it's just going to be difficult for people to use your website on a mobile phone. Now, number 3 is micro interactions and cursors. And I've got on screen just a little example of what I'm actually referring to here. So on the left, we've got a button, and when you click on that button, it signifies that something is happening in the background, and then tells you when the file has been downloaded. That's a micro interaction. On the right-hand side, we've got a navigation, and as you move the mouse over the navigation, there's a hover effect. Now, I appreciate it's quite a verbose example of an animated cursor, but I'm just trying to show you an example of what it would look like. Now, actually, we'll all probably have the same frustration, right? When we click a button on a website and you're not sure if it's actually doing anything in the background, and you have that little frustrated moment of, is it doing anything? What's going on? Am I waiting for it to load? Now, a micro interaction can take that frustration away by just signifying to the user that something is going on in the background, so it can really improve the user experience of your site. On the flip side, an animated cursor, again, using this to boost engagement on your website is where you're going to see the value. So let me give you a real case example. Let's say you've got a video on your website. When you move the mouse over that video, it would be really helpful for the mouse icon to change to a play icon. That would encourage the user to then click on the video and click play. And then whilst the video is playing, the icon then changes to a pause icon so that the user knows that their next click would pause the video. These are just subtle things, but they really elevate your website's user experience and improve the journey that your users will go through. Now, number 4 is it's a phrase we've coined, and it's called true reflection design. So imagine this, you're walking down the road and you see this Bentley. Now, you'd have maybe an impression or an assumption of what that person does as a job, maybe. You may have all things in your mind. Or imagine you get invited round for coffee, and your friends open the front door and you're met with this. And you think, boy, lovely house, really, really nice. What are these things? These are first impressions, yeah? It's kind of your gut feeling when you see something. Now, what happens when someone browses your website and they see this? What's their impression of your business? The impression of your business, if they saw something like this, is that it's unloved, it's dated, it's really busy, no one's looking after it. And that's not the impression that you want to give of your business. So this is what I'm talking about when it comes to true reflection design. It's that the design of your website is a true reflection of your business. If anything, it elevates the status of your business. It puts you out there as a market leader, one of the best in the area, and so on and so forth. So, little caveat to this, it's really difficult for us to critique our own websites because sometimes we're a little bit too close to them. We might look at the website and we might go, yeah, it looks really good. You might want someone outside of your business to have a look at your website objectively and to actually give you some real, honest, hard-hitting feedback on whether actually the design of your site is a true reflection of your business. Now, number 5 is dark mode. Now, I'm sure you've seen this on a mobile device. This is where, based on the time of day or the light in the room, your mobile phone might flip between a black background with white text and vice versa. Now, this trend is actually coming through to websites, and we're seeing more and more websites now with a little toggle in the header area to allow people to toggle between light mode, which would be kind of default, and then dark mode. Now, dark mode looks really cool because it kind of inverts all the colors. So, just from a vanity perspective, it looks lovely, but actually it's got far more benefit than that. So if you're browsing websites on a mobile phone in dark mode, it'll use less battery. And secondly, it's really good for accessibility. So if people have maybe visual impairments, they will more often than not switch to dark mode because it's easier for them to browse around the site. So yeah, consider putting dark mode onto your site, a really simple thing to add, but really effective. And then number 6 is the final point within the design section, and this is intuitive navigation. So often we'll browse around websites, and I'm sure you've done this as well, and you're not quite sure where to go. You're not sure how to get from A to B. And it's just a really difficult process. It's like walking through treacle. And it's really important that we kind of take that barrier away. If we want people to engage with us digitally, we need to make that experience uber simple for them. So when you're thinking about building your navigation on your website, think about these 3 things. Think about the layout, first of all. So the layout of the navigation, are you thinking about having maybe navigation links across the top of your website? Are you thinking about maybe having them in what we call a hamburger icon, which are those 3 lines that we often see? Are you thinking about maybe having the navigation falling into the footer as well, so that you split the navigation between the header and footer? Lots of different options, but think about the layout and what's right for your business. Secondly, look at hierarchy. So not everything can go in the top navigation, believe it or not. Okay, so we have to be strict with ourselves and say, look, my core pages are going to be in the top navigation, and the things which are secondary need to move to maybe a footer navigation. And then third and finally, content. This is actually referring to the phrases and the words that we use within the navigation. If we're using loads of technical jargon or words that only resonate within our industry, that's not going to help people navigate through your site. So you need to think of simple words, simple phrases to allow people to understand what it is that you have on offer. Now, little pro tip, if you're a service-based business, and I know there's lots of those here today, don't just think about selling services, but think about it as selling solutions. Now, let me give you a real example. At Webbox, we offer website design, website development, paid media management, so on and so forth. You might not know, though, that you need one of those services, but you certainly know that your current challenge is not enough inquiries into the business. So actually, if I said on our site, one of the solutions we provide is generating more inquiries for your business, everyone can relate to that. And the services that go behind that can be talked about as a second stage, but everyone can relate to that challenge and that solution. Okay, so start thinking about solutions versus services to help people engage with you a little easier. Okay, moving on to the second section. I'm going to speed up a little bit, okay, so bear with me. And we're thinking about the content of your site. So the first point here, this is number 7 of our 25, is a clear proposition. On your website, when I land on the home page, it's really important that actually I understand what it is that you do without having to scroll and to read too much. I need to understand why I'm on this website, why I need to speak to you as a business. And if I've got to, go and read your About Us page, go and see some case studies, look at your services to find that out, quite frankly, I'm not going to hang around. Okay, so it's really important that we set out our stall and we are really clear about what it is that we provide. Now, the example on the screen is a really poor example of this. I'm sure we'll all agree we've got no idea what this business does from landing on their homepage. It's really important that we don't put that barrier in place. Now, obviously, this proposition piece is actually really difficult, though, because if I said to you, could you tell me what your business does in one sentence? It's actually quite difficult. Often we then start, circling around ideas, and it ends up being 3 sentences, 4 sentences. It's really important as a business that you've got a clear proposition and you can sum that up in one sentence. And if you can do that, that's what should be at the top of your website. Now, the next point is all about brand transparency. So we've seen a real rise in user experience that is centered around demonstrating a brand's ethics, showing the user how exactly products are made or services are provided. So this image on the right-hand side is obviously from an e-commerce website. And what they're doing here is they're showing you how the product is made and the sustainable materials used to manufacture that product, which brings a real sense of transparency. Now, the same can be applied for a service-based business, because you'll then have maybe a team page and you'll talk about each team member and their skills and their experience. And what it does is it brings your website from being this kind of static, behind the scenes thing to being a real life business tool. So it's really important that we have a transparency on our website and that we actually go over and above to make it clear on how a product is made or how a service is delivered. Now, the next point is interactive storytelling. And I must confess, this is one of my favorites. So here's a little example of what I mean by interactive storytelling. So this is a user navigating down a web page. And as they navigate, you can see that there's some videos, there's some animation, there's some text. And what you'll do is, as you navigate further down the page, you get sucked in more and more because it's a really engaging page. It's not like going down a web page where there's just 1,500 words of text, because if we're really honest, no one's going to read that. Okay, so it's really important that we consider interactive storytelling on our websites and how that fits in. Now, this works really well on, let's say, an About Us page, because again, if you've got 1,000 words about the business, when it was founded, who founded it, it was started in Johnny's back garage and so on, often that isn't really engaging. It doesn't do anything for the user. But if you can create this page to actually tell a story, and that's quite animated, engaging, interactive, all of a sudden people will engage with that. And as they're going down the page, they'll get drawn in more and more. Now, the next is interactive features. So often we browse around sites and there's a real boredom, but we need to change that to have people who are really engaged with our site. Now, interactive features are things which ultimately are allows the user to engage there and then. Okay, so this could be, and I've put some examples on screen, this could be like a calculator. So if you're a mortgage advisor, put a calculator on your website, allow people to play around with numbers and percentages just to get a feel for what it is that they could expect in terms of the next conversation. But by doing that, you've made your website sticky, as we call it, in that they're going to stick around longer and engage with you. Or you might want to put a quiz or a custom planner, a ticket selector, whatever it is for your business. It's important that there's an element of interactivity so that people can actually stay around longer and engage with you, as I'm sure they would if you were in person, but we're trying to replicate that digitally. Now, I did say it'd be fast, so I hope we're all keeping up. Let's move on to the next section, which is marketing, and we're on to the 11th must-have. So this is technical SEO, and I know this is a really hot topic at the moment. There are so many changes in the world of SEO at the moment. Things are evolving all of the time. And I'm sure you've seen when you do a Google search now, there's a Gen AI overview at the top of that page, which is AI basically scouring the internet and trying to deliver you the answer so that you don't need to go through to a website. That's a killer, if I'm honest, for what we call click-through rates, because people aren't clicking through to the website anymore because they actually just get delivered the information on the Google search engine results page. However, there are still ways to kind of win in this environment. And I think it's really important that we go back to the solid SEO principles that we know are tried and tested. So making sure that your website's written well, and that's not just from a content perspective, but also a code perspective in the background. Making sure it's fast to load, making sure that everything is tagged. So things like meta tags, alt tags. If you've got if you've got an international website, putting hreflang tags in so that Google knows which country you're targeting. All of these things, which are the kind of basic SEO principles, are really important that you put in place. So even though lots of things are evolving and AI is obviously having a huge impact, the fundamentals remain the same. So we'll come back to this, I'm sure, at the end, but technical SEO is important that we stay on top of that. My final point here is this is not a one-off piece of work, okay? So don't think, right, I've addressed a few of these points, pat yourself on the back, I'm done. This is actually something which you need to keep chipping away at month on month, because if you're not, ultimately your competitors are. Moving on to landing pages, and the best example of a landing page, in my opinion, is on the Apple website. What Apple do is they use this interactive storytelling piece that I've just talked about to suck you in to buy that product. So as you navigate down the page, you're looking at the product, how it's made, its features, its benefits, its craftsmanship, and so on. And it's very interactive. And by the end of that page, if you're anything like me, you're looking for that buy button. You're desperate for that product. Now, that is a really good landing page because it's told a story. It's kind of got you engaged. It's put the things which resonate with you in front of you. And that's really what we should be doing for our landing pages. Now, you might use a landing page for maybe a particular promotion or an event you're running or something like that. These are pages which you would normally send people to directly. So maybe you might send an email campaign out and you'll send people to a landing page rather than just your home page. So these have got to be hard-hitting pages which ultimately deliver a return on investment for your business. So it's important that we get them right. Now, we actually can help with that. We've actually got some documents about kind of how we can improve landing pages, some kind of tips and advice for you. So if you want to chat to us after, I can share a webinar recording that we've actually done specifically on landing pages, because as you can imagine, this is quite a big topic. If I give you just one pro tip, it's really important that your landing pages are not stagnant. So you need to use tools like Hotjar and others to actually learn how people are engaging with you on these landing pages. Where are the blockers? And then you can start to improve the experience of those landing pages. So yeah, don't just put them in place and think you're done. Again, it's something which should evolve over time. A second pro tip is try and integrate these landing pages with your CRM. So if you use something like Salesforce, HubSpot, Zoho, and many others, it's really important that when someone completes a form on these landing pages, that information just goes straight into your CRM so that you're not having to do anything like that manually. Okay. Right, moving on. Number 13, believe it or not, and we're on to call to actions. Now, we'll all be aware that it's really important to have a call to action on a website, but so often we will audit websites and you just can't see the call to action. It just doesn't seem to be present. At least it's not that clear. So first point is make sure your call to actions are really obvious. Again, if I've got to kind of look around for it and try and find it, then that is a barrier for that particular customer. Second thing is don't just look at a call to action as an inquiry or a sale, because if we picture this in a marketing funnel, The marketing funnel is actually driving inquiries at the bottom of the funnel. So we need to think a little bit higher up. How can we get people to engage with us? So that could be downloading a white paper or downloading a guide, attending an event, so on and so forth. These are all things which people can still interact with you online, but they're not so salesy, should we say? Okay, so it's actually really important that we look at this as a marketing funnel and say, how can we engage with people at the top of the funnel as well as the bottom of the funnel? Because they might not be ready to inquire, here and now. So we call these primary and secondary call to actions. So my advice today is try and list those out. Just get a bit of paper and write down what are your primary call to actions and what are my secondary call to actions, and then start to map that out on your website. Little thing you could do, and this is not scientific, but if you just look away from your screen, allow your eyes to reset, and then look back at the website. Ask yourself, what were my eyes drawn to? If your eyes were drawn to the call to action, that's great, happy days. But if they weren't, and maybe just your eyes weren't drawn to anything in particular, then that's probably a sign you need to address this point. Okay, believe it or not, we're halfway through. Hope everyone's still with me. Let's keep going on to number 14, which is advanced tracking. Now, I got a series of questions. If you just want to kind of think about these in your own mind, don't worry too much about using the Q&A at this point. So just in your own mind, just have a little think. Are you currently using Google Analytics to track your users on your website? So that's just going to be a yes or no. Are we currently using Google Analytics? If you are using Google Analytics, are you currently using what we call event or e-commerce tracking? This is where we actually track how many people have engaged with a button or a form or bought something online. Again, just answer this yes or no for yourself. Thirdly, is an action triggered after a conversion is tracked? So does something does something trigger? Does something happen in the background once a conversion is tracked? Again, yes or no. And then finally, is your website or marketing adapted after a conversion is tracked? So let's say someone completes a form. Does the website experience change, or does your marketing strategy change because of that? Again, just answer that yes or no in your own mind. Now, I'm taking you through those series of questions because, as you can remember, we started by saying, do we have Google Analytics in place? And for most people, you'll probably say yes to that. You'll probably say, yeah, I've got Google Analytics in place. Pat myself on the back, tracking is done. Big tick in the box. But there are so many things that we can do with that data to actually weaponize your business ultimately, because actually data is really powerful. If we can understand how people engage with you digitally, how people are using your website, why are they not completing that form? If we can answer these questions using data, then we can improve the website and build a better business. So it's really important that we don't just think of tracking as putting the basics in place, but actually how can we really take this to the next level so we understand how people are engaging with us digitally? Because of course, we're not over their shoulder when they're browsing your website, but this data can almost do that, and then can show us how they're using our website. So a little pro tip again, if you've got lots of data, you might have data from Google Analytics. You might be running maybe a Facebook ads campaign, and again, that will produce data. Maybe you're running LinkedIn ads, again, that will produce data. What you can do is you can create a centralized dashboard within Google Looker Studio, which feeds all of these data points into one dashboard and surfaces the information that's actually important to you. So if that's kind of relevant for your business, that's a must-have. Secondly, you might be struggling with getting people to actually accept cookies, because if they don't accept cookies on your website, you can't track them at all. So again, little pro tip here is your cookies banner is more often than not this little thin banner across the bottom of the website, which so many people miss, and they're not actually forced then to click accept or decline. And if they don't do anything with that, you can't track them. So why not push that, that little kind of strip at the bottom, put it front and center, put it in the middle of the screen and gray out the perimeter and get them to click accept or decline. your acceptance rate will naturally go up because more people will actually engage with that banner, which ultimately means you can track more people, which ultimately means you get more data to enhance your website. Now, if you need some help with GA4, because we know Google Analytics is a bit of a minefield, we've got a doc on that, so you can scan the QR code and we'll send it to you afterwards as well. But you can actually just find out more about that tool and how to get the most out of it using that doc. Okay, moving on to some points about functionality. So the first is personalization. So this is really important that we understand that not all users are the same. Okay, so let's say Rob goes to our website and then Shauna goes to our website and then I go to our website. We're all coming with different needs and wants. We're all coming with different technical abilities. We're coming with different backgrounds and so on. So why do we serve people the same website? It's really important that maybe we start to adjust the website's layout, its content, and so on, so that we can be more personalized to that user. Now, the example you've just seen on the screen is actually two users that go to the same web page, but they are shown different images and content based on what the website knows about them. Now, this can be a little bit freaky, and of course, AI can play a part in this, but personalizing the content and the user experience on the website can have a huge impact on your conversion rate. Now, this is a big topic, so I'm going to brush over it for now, but if this is something of interest, then it'd certainly be worth delving into it in a bit more detail. In the meantime, you might want to have a look at the tool called Personalize. YZE at the end, because Personalize is a great platform to allow you to start putting some of this functionality in place on your website. Okay, this talk wouldn't be this talk without AI, would it? Okay, but of course it's a massive topic and we just haven't got the time to even scrape the surface at the moment. Now, I've got a couple of just core points when it comes to AI. So often we are focused on the gimmicky stuff of AI. So you know, in your office, you might have been playing around with it and you say, well, you know, what does Chris look like as Santa? And then the AI will put a Santa kit on Chris. And you go, oh, that's cool. What about if Chris had a beard? Oh, okay, well, this is what Chris would look like with a beard. This is all just gimmicky stuff. And I think what we've got to do is ask ourselves in business, what is it that we're going to use AI for, which is actually going to have an impact? Okay, so my first point is, don't focus too much on the gimmicky AI stuff because there is so much of that on the market. That's not going to transform your business. Okay, it's really important that we ask ourselves, how could AI improve our processes, make us more efficient, improve operations, so on and so forth? And they're the hard-hitting questions. My second point on AI is don't become lazy and just let AI do everything for you. You know, we're all a little bit kind of guilty of that, where maybe we rely quite heavily on AI in particular parts of our work. But just remember, you are the marketer or you are the business owner. AI is just an enabler. Okay, so it's really important that we don't just let AI take over, but we harness the power that it has. So yeah, it's a really big topic, but they're just 2 points I want to leave you with today. Now, the next point is in relation to your website forms, okay? So I'm sure on all of our websites, we've got a form that might be on the contact page, it might be on a landing page or so on. And so often we see forms which are just really difficult to use. They're kind of really cumbersome and they're just not easy to engage with. So again, that's going to reduce your conversion rate. So a couple of little tips. You could use a full screen form. Now, a full screen form takes over the full page. And the benefit of that is then people don't get distracted by clicking around, you know, your navigation and kind of moving around. Their sole focus is then to complete that form. The other form or the other type of form you could use is what we call a progressive lead form. Now, a progressive lead form is where we integrate with your CRM, so something like HubSpot, Salesforce, and so on, and we start to build up data about people over time. So let's say Rob comes to our website and Rob signs up for our newsletter. So he gives us his name and email address to sign up for the newsletter. Now, the next time Rob comes to our site, why would we show him the same form? Because we already have got his details. We already know who he is. So on the second visit, maybe we should ask Rob, what's your job title and what's the company you work for? And then maybe on the third visit, we might ask other questions. And this is a great way to drip feed more and more data into your CRM over time, but it also improves the user experience for Rob because you're not asking him the same questions time and time again. Okay, moving on to real-time updates. Okay, so this is best for e-commerce, but it can actually work in lots of different settings. So you need to create a sense of FOMO, this fear of missing out. Okay, so actually, if you can say, 20 people have bought this product in the last week, or 10 people are looking at this product right now, or we've only got 2 left in stock. Actually having these real-time updates on your website can create some urgency and actually help you drive a better conversion rate. Now, the next section is about behind the scenes. This is something which is not often talked about, but actually behind a website, we know there's often a content management system, and we know there's other technical things. So I'm just going to touch lightly on some of these things which are behind the scenes. So the first point is choosing the right CMS for the project. So often we come across businesses who have started a website on Wix, Shopify, WordPress, Magento, all of these big CMS names that I'm sure we've come across. But they've done that without actually considering scalability, security. Is it the right choice for us as a business? Does it meet our requirements? So on and so forth. And they might have done that because a friend has referred them, or another business they know uses a particular CMS, but it might not be for all the right reasons. So I just want to encourage us to be a little bit more pragmatic when choosing a CMS, because it is the foundation of your website. So it's important that we get that right. Now, again, we've got a little document on this. So if you want to scan the QR code, you can actually download a document which will talk you through a number of the leading CMSs on the market and their pros and cons. So you can objectively compare CMSs side by side. Moving on to intelligent automation. I touched on this a little bit before. So when a form is, when a form is completed, then you want that information to go straight into your CRM. That's one kind of automation which would be useful for your business. Maybe you want to take that a step further. So actually, once someone's inquired, that initial follow-up email, maybe to arrange a call, again, could be automated. It could be a personalized message, but a system could send that out automatically. Taking that a step further, maybe you don't hear back from that person. A week's gone by and they haven't come back to your email. So you've got to remember to chase them, or you put some automation in place that actually, if you haven't heard back from them within 7 days, the system is going to send them another email and say, look, I haven't heard from you. Just wondered if you want to meet for a coffee. These are some of the automations you can put in place in your business so that you're not chasing the day-to-day, and that actually the software and the website is actually doing some of the heavy lifting for you. So I would encourage you to have a little think about what processes you do within your business which are repeatable. Which things do you do day in, day out, or week in, week out? They're a little bit mundane, which could become automated processes. And then once you've got a list of those, we can then start to talk about how we can actually tick them off and get these automated for you. And the last point in this section is about security and redundancy. None of us think about the security or redundancy of our websites until, unfortunately, it's too late. So if our website got compromised, got hacked, at that point we go, gosh, I didn't realize it was so out of date, or I've left all those plugins just at age. It's only at that point that we go, oh, okay, real big issue here. At Webbox, we want to be a little bit more proactive and of course, be trying to stay on top of these security updates. So our kind of advice is to make sure that every month CMS and plugin updates are implemented. And we also test then our backup and redundancy processes to make sure that actually, if the worst case scenario happened, we've got the right things in place. So this is really important. I'm sure you guys already know, but something which a reminder doesn't do any harm. Okay, coming into our last section. So this is all about the experience of your website. And the first part of this is accessibility. And it's first for a very, very good reason. Okay. So again, just, either use the hands up feature in Zoom or just have a little think in your own mind. But did you consider accessibility during the build of your website. Okay, so what I mean by that is when you're building your site, did you think about people who might have visual impairments, or people that might have a learning difficulty or something of that nature, and how they might be browsing around your website? I really hope that you did, and I hope that this is something which we can all try and improve as well. Because do you know what? This is not just for public sector bodies, sorry. This is for all businesses, small, medium, and large. It's really important for us to actually get on top of accessibility and make sure that our websites are accessible. Now, again, this can be a really big topic, but it doesn't need to be complicated. So there are some tools out there which you can just quite simply embed onto your website to allow people to do things like increase or decrease the font size, or change the contrast, or change the colors, and so on and so forth. And they can do those on the fly, but it just makes browsing around your website a little bit easier for those users. Now, page speed. No one wins the race if it's slow and steady, but it's all about speed and power. That's what they say, right? So page speed is important because we're not hanging around. So back in the day, I've been doing this now for 16 years. The kind of rule of thumb was people might wait 3 or 4 seconds for a website to load. That's not the case anymore. We're more impatient than ever, if we're honest. Okay, so it's really important that our websites are quick to load, because if they're not only is it a really poor user experience, but Google will also negatively impact your rankings because of it. Okay. Google don't come out with many things definitively, but we know definitively page speed is a big factor of SEO. Okay, so your website needs to be quick to load, because Google want to send users through to websites that have got a great user experience. Again, a little pro tip, Google have got a tool for this. So if you scan this QR code, you can go through to Google's page speed tool. You can put in your domain name and it will give you a score out of 100. You're aiming for an absolute minimum of 80%, really on mobile, because that's what matters. But actually 90% is the benchmark that Google say this is now good. Okay, so it's really important that maybe just after this session, if you want to run your website through Google's page speed tool, if you're well below 80 or 90%, then obviously they're going to give you some tips on how to improve that. Okay, chatbots. Oh gosh, you either love them or hate them, right? Chatbots, people get so frustrated with using them, but they can also be so helpful. Okay, so I think what I want to say on this is, unfortunately, it's a necessary evil. Okay, chatbots are helpful for users. Okay, they just are, but the way in which they're implemented is really important. Okay, so first of all, make sure you've got a chat bot which has got a huge bank of question and answers in it, so that you can answer frequently asked questions at the drop of a hat. Okay, but this is the important thing to take away. Make sure the user has the ability to move on to live chat or raise a support ticket if they can't find the answer. Because there's nothing more frustrating with dealing with a chatbot and it doesn't tell you the right answer and you just go, oh, I'm just going around in circles here. This is so frustrating. You need the ability to then transition that user through to live chat or support tickets to then, make this a better experience. So yeah, chatbots, necessary evil, but make sure you've got the right functionality in place. And here we are, number 25. Okay, this is the last must-have, and this is voice user interface design, VUI design. You might not know what this is, but I'm sure you've seen something like this, where on the Google search, on the right-hand side, you see a little microphone icon. Now, when you click on that microphone icon, you can then speak into the website. You can speak your search. And this is what we're talking about with VUI design. This is actually coming about because there's a real rise in virtual assistants and voice search. I'm sure we've all got an Alexa or Google Home back at the house. These are things which we're becoming more and more familiar with using. And of course, then that's going to translate into websites as well. So a little starting point is if you're trying to kind of go into this area, just start with applying that functionality into your website's search feature. So like that Google screenshot previously, allow people to speak into the search. And then after that, there's loads of other things that you could try when it comes to VUI design, but that's a really good starting point to help you on your way. Now, I've wrapped up all of the 25 must-haves. As you can imagine, there's a lot of content here, so I appreciate there'll be lots of questions. But just before the questions, I just want to go through a few very quick things. I've mentioned a few resources throughout this talk. We've got a bank of these resources at Webbox, and we'd love to send them to you. So after this, we'll send you a link where you can go and download these resources. They're all just PDFs that you're freely able to access. Secondly, we do these webinars quite frequently, and we've got a number of different webinars coming over the next few months. If you're interested in joining to find out more about kind of website and marketing related topics, please feel free to go to our Eventbrite page. You'd be most welcome. And finally, audits. So you might be struggling with your website at the moment. You might think it's just not performing for my business. Well, we're able to offer a free digital audit where we'll look at either your website or your PPC campaign and come back to you with personalized recommendations based on our kind of audit and our understanding of your website and business. Now, this starts with just a short call where we get to understand you and your business a little bit more, and then we can roll from there. So again, if you want to request that, there's a QR code on screen now. And again, we'll follow up with a link. But for now, thank you. Appreciate it's a lot of content to go through, but I'll hand back over to Rob, who will host our Q&A session.
Thank you, Will, for a great session. There's so much. I mean, I just made a few notes. The mobile first design, first impressions, the interactive storytelling, the personalization, the tools you mentioned in terms of Hotjar, Personalize, really, really useful, I'm sure, for everybody in the room today. So lots of questions, as you said. Some of the things we've touched on, some of the things we'll revisit, if it's okay, particularly SEO in a sec. But a couple of questions I'll pick out. Do you have any tips on what kinds of pricing information you put on your site? Should it be from X pounds or should it be actual pricing?
Okay, so this is a good question. I would say step back a little bit and understand the inquiries that are coming into your business. If the inquiries are maybe not aligned with your pricing, then you might want to say, we're going to say from X on the website, to then weed out lots of people who are inquiring that don't meet your level of service. On the flip side, if that's not the case, my default stance is not to list prices on a website, because you don't want to give all of the information away. You want to start to build conversations and relationships with people sooner rather than later. So if you can help it, I wouldn't list prices on a website.
Thanks. So a question that's come in, really interesting session. Thank you. I have a Shopify website, and this really limits what you can do. A lot of what you mentioned today, is it for coded website that gives you more flexibility?
Yeah, very good question. So Shopify and other platforms similar to that, like Wix, are very limited. So they're great to get you started. Of course, it's a great starter product, but outside of that, it's very difficult to enhance. And I mentioned earlier, didn't I, about scalability of a CMS. It's really important that when you select a CMS like Shopify, Wix, WordPress, Magento, so on, that you're selecting CMSs that are scalable, that can actually grow with your business. And for us at Webbox, we work with a handful of different CMSs, but actually WordPress and Sulu, Laravel-based Craft, there's a number of CMSs like that we work with, which allow you to be far more scalable and implement a lot of these functions far more easier than some of these kind of starter CMSs.
Thanks. And lots of questions of SEO, and I know you've touched on SEO, Will, but if I can ask a specific question. Again, same comment, really interesting session again. So hopefully people have found the session worthwhile today.
Great.
Not having large amounts of text, I totally get it. However, I've been using an SEO tool which has advised me to write longer sections. Is there a sweet spot?
Yeah, there certainly is. There's a place for short form and long form content. Okay. So if I land on your website and there's 1,500 words, that's great from an SEO perspective, but it's really poor from a user experience. And actually, Google's more interested in the user experience than it is just ticking SEO boxes. So there's absolutely a sweet spot, and that sweet spot is put your users first. Think about it, more naturally. Don't write long form content just to tick SEO boxes. Where it is applicable, though, is maybe you're writing blog posts. Well, those blog posts could become your long form content, where actually 1,500 words is not unusual, and that's your opportunity to go into more detail. But for the general pages, we tend to have much less text.
Great, thank you. Lots of questions about footers, contact, where you put your contact details and so on. So if I can just merge two. Should you have your contact details and contact information on every page? And what's the quickest way to add that kind of information, footer links about privacy and so on, to your website? So two kind of questions in one, if I may.
Yeah. So often people will look in the footer for contact information and privacy information and so on. So let's not throw a spanner in the works. If people often look there for that information, then let's put it there. But when it comes to contact information, I think a traditional way, which is now dated, is to have all of that in the header. Here's my email address, here's my phone number, so on. We need to move away from that because that's dated. But I would have a contact button in the header. And what I would recommend is then implementing what we call a sticky header. And what that means is as you navigate down a web page, the header always stays in view. So if it's always in view as you navigate down the page, you'll always see that contact button.
Great, thank you. And again, another positive comment here. Thank you for a great session. With thumb-friendly design, would you advise the menu hamburger is brought to the bottom?
Yeah, really interesting point, actually, Ruth, because we've done that on a site recently. So we actually moved the hamburger icon to the bottom right, and we're currently analysing data on whether that's an improvement or not. And the reason I say not is because everyone's expectations is that that icon is generally in the top right. So if people are expecting it to be there, then again, let's not throw a spanner in the works. But we are testing that at the moment. So I think it's definitely worth seeing how that test goes. I think the bottom left or right is a good call.
So despite the fact that we had Judge Judy suggesting that we had limited time for AI, lots of questions on AI, as you'd expect. So I don't feel like I'm doing my job if I don't ask. How best can we use AI on our websites?
Yeah, there's so many ways. Here's an interesting way. When you're reading, blog posts or news articles, case studies, and so on, often at the bottom of those pages, we'll have related content. So it'll be kind of like, here's a case study, you've read that, and at the bottom, it'll say related case studies, and then it's listing out a few of those. That's because the business has manually selected those case studies to be related to the one that you're reading. Why not let AI do that? So if AI were to say, we're gonna serve these 3 case studies as related to what the user is currently reading, we can be far more intelligent about why they're related, because what the AI will do is it'll understand how people have been browsing around the website, what they've been reading, what's interesting them, what isn't. And then when it serves up related content, that content is going to be personalized to that user. So that's quite an interesting way to use AI on a website. Just one other quick example is if you've got a search feature on your site, again, that could be powered by AI. So rather than me search something in the search box and the results are then just generic based on tags or popularity or something else, let the AI serve up the results, which are personalized to me and how I've been browsing around that website, and you'll get a far better result.
Great. Another positive comment. That was amazing. So I'm literally working on getting a Squarespace website up and running for my copywriting business. Last website was more of a shop window, but if I want to be found, how often should I add, amend new content? And that's very much in line with a question we've had from a number of people. How often should I update content?
Yeah. So I think there's this kind of, there's this thing in the industry where like the more content, the better. And I don't think it's quantity, I think it's quality. So, you know, if you're there going, look, we're going to just put 2, 3, 4 blog posts out a week, you know, I would challenge that and say, are they any good? Is the content resonating with your users? Are these hot topics? Are they topics anyone cares about? I think we've got to really challenge ourselves there. It's really got to be quality over quantity. As a general rule of thumb, I would say that we want to be putting at least 1 blog post out a month. So for me, that's where I normally say is the default, you know, 1 blog post a month. Of course, you can do more, but I would always focus on quality over quantity.
Thanks. And we'll take one, I'll give one last question before kind of an attempted catch-all, if I can, with the final question. What would you class as secondary pages and what would you class as hot core pages in terms of layout? Do you have an example you could give perhaps for an ideal header? And this is from somebody who's new to website and asks for some sort of forgiveness about maybe the lack of proper terminology that's being used.
Okay. So I'm just having a look at the question here. So, okay, so secondary pages. Okay, so the way that I would look at this is your primary pages are ultimately what are going to drive conversions into your business. So this could be things like a homepage, a contact page, a services page or solutions, as I mentioned earlier, maybe case studies. They are core pages which will influence whether people inquire to your business or not. Secondary pages are, for want of a better phrase, the fluff around the edges. So things like about us, our history, terms, conditions, privacy policy, you know, meet the team, so on. These are secondary pages. They might have a small impact on whether someone inquires, but it's very small. So in terms of looking at the hierarchy of your navigation, I would split it into what is going to drive impact and inquiries versus what's just going to have a small impact on the overall picture.
Great, thanks. And one last really quick question, Will. I'm putting you on the spot. I'm summarizing 15 different questions. Is there one key takeaway from today?
Well, there's 25 takeaways. Look, the one takeaway is this. We need to look at our websites as a piece of software. A piece of software updates all of the time. It's not stagnant. So let's not look at our website as something we create and then we just leave it for ages, you know, months or years for the dust to gather, because that is the impression given then of your business. Okay. So my advice is look at it as a bit of software. It needs to be updated regularly. We need to be involving it. We need to be learning from data, because actually that's when you're going to get the best out of the website, and it's going to become a tool for your business.
Great. Thanks, Will. Thank you for answering so many of those questions there so comprehensively and efficiently. Thank you for a great session. I'm pretty sure the comments coming through, it certainly has been useful for everybody. Do remember, everyone, you can watch the session again on our on-demand page. And please do remember that if you want more info about how FSB can help you, please book a session with a membership advisor. Really hope that everybody's found the session useful today. If that is the case, please do leave a Trustpilot review for us. We've got lots of events going on, as I think many of you will know, in-person events and virtual events. Do have a look at our FSB events page to see what's going on and what might help you. Will, thank you again for a fantastic session. Really
No
great.
problem.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. We look forward to seeing you at further events. In the meantime, big best wishes to you all and to your businesses. Thank you, everybody. Bye.